Hello, this is a video that's talking about Chapter 7 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is all about treasure. And the reason I decided to make a video of this one is because there's a lot of charts in this chapter, and looking at all of those charts can feel very overwhelming. But I'm going to go through it and try to simplify it as much as possible so that you can get through any treasure hoard plundering without a lot of stress on the part of the person running the game. So the first thing to keep in mind with treasure is, as it mentions here and in many other parts of the D&D manuals, is that these are just guidelines. This is not a thing where if you're not giving them the right amount of treasure at the right place, you're ruining the entire game. Like, that's not how any of this works. It's just a guideline that gives you some hints and examples of what kinds of things are really good for certain levels. It gives you what kinds of things are really good for certain difficulty level of creatures that you're fighting, and it gives you a way to just randomize that if you don't want to even have to deal with coming up with it on your own at all. You can use this stuff and add whatever else you want. You can use this stuff and take away from it whatever else you want. You can roll twice on any of the charts. You can just do whatever you want with it. It's just there to help you kind of get an idea of how to balance treasure and magical items in a game. So yeah, that's what this first section is. Now there's two basic things that you'll want to think about when deciding what treasure to give to somebody or what chart to roll on for treasure. The first thing is, talked about in this little column here, is it one creature or is it like a group of creatures? Like, did you plunder one goblin that you just randomly found on the road and you just kind of backstabbed him? Or is this like a goblin village that you took out the whole village and now you're looting whatever's left? That's going to make a difference on the kind of treasure that you find, because a random goblin on the road's going to have like some pocket change, maybe a sword, you know. A group of goblins who live together in a village are probably going to have some kind of village treasury. It might not be a lot, they're goblins, but they'll have more than just pocket change. There'll be like a little bit of a thing that you can do. So that's the first thing to decide, is what kind of encounter it is. The second thing to decide is how hard was the encounter. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of the math on figuring that out because it's complicated and I can do that in another video, but I can quickly point out where to find those things. First place to look is on page 82 of the same book. You'll notice that there's a chart right here, and then there's a lot of mathy looking stuff right here, and another chart here. It is a lot of math, but it's not complicated math. Basically, you do crunch some numbers in order to figure out what level the party is, and what level the monsters were, and the relative difficulty of that party facing those monsters. That's how you decide whether an encounter was really, really hard or whether it was way too easy for a party. Like, before you even run it, you can make sure to balance it how you want it. Like, if you want it to be a pretty easy encounter, the math to do that is right here. If you want it to be a really hard encounter that they might die, the math to do that is right here. And if you don't understand any of this math, Google is your friend. There's a lot of forums that go over this kind of thing, so it's figure outable. So that's one place to look for the difficulty level of an encounter. The other place to look is at what kind of thing that they are facing. I've got a monster manual in my hand. I'm going to open it to just a totally random page and see what kind of creature we are facing today. Ooh, sloths. Okay, so sloths are, you see that on this page there's a bunch of different kinds of sloths: gray, green, tadpole, blue, red, and they all are similar, but they have slightly different statistics, and that's what these different boxes are for. The statistics for the creatures are listed there. Now you'll notice that in all of these boxes, they're kind of shaped very similarly. They've all got a little box right here that starts with skills and ends with challenge. Challenge is the challenge rating that we've been talking about. The difficulty level of the creature. Now, you'll notice that this blue slot right here, it says challenge 7, which means it's a relatively hard creature compared to, for example, this one, which is a challenge 1. Challenge 7 slot will help you determine how difficult it is for your characters to fight that creature and how much treasure they should get from it after they have defeated it or killed it or whatever they end up doing. So those are the two things to keep in mind, individual or group, and how hard is it. Now, the next page, once you turn here, these charts right here are all flavor charts. You can use them if you want, you can ignore them if you want, you can do whatever with those. But they're kind of fun because later on when you're doing some rolls to find treasure, it'll say something like, this treasure hoard has 16 gemstones worth 100 gold pieces each. And you can say that to the players if you want. You can say, you find 16 gemstones that are worth 100 gold pieces each. Or you can come to this chart and you can find that there's a listing right here for 100 gold piece gemstones. And you can roll a die, in this case it's a D10, and see what kind of gemstones they are. For example, if we wanted to, if we rolled a 4, then we would see that these gemstones are coral. And that just, it gives it a little bit of flavor. It's kind of a nice touch to have specific details. Not all players care about that, some will. It's up to you on these. And like, so there's gemstones here, there's art objects here, just that's all flavor stuff. Alright, next section is magic items. Magic items are kind of the bread and butter of the whole treasure thing. The players want money and they want magical stuff. Magic items can be anything from really, really, really common things that you can just buy at any old store, which is this listing on this chart here, up to legendary items, which are things like there's one of these in the entire world and it has a name and it has a history and it's really, really powerful, but there's literally only one. And if you have things like this at a store, players can buy them. There's a general price range right here on this little chart for doing that. If you have, there's a little chart right here that's like character level information. You don't want to give a legendary item to a first level character. Like you could, but it would kind of break the game and things get weird when somebody who's got 7 hit points can deal like 64 damage or something like that. It's ridiculous. So there's just like a general reference on this little chart right there that you can use just to know what you're getting into when you're dealing with certain items in a book. Alright, so on this next page, you've got, here are the charts for the individual things, the pocket change charts. And here is where you start getting they go on for a couple of pages, where you start getting the charts for rolling for a hoard. Now, we looked at the slod earlier in that monster manual, and it said challenge rating 7. So challenge rating 7 would be this second chart right here. You can see it says 5 through 10 right there. So that's the chart that we would roll on for how much treasure a slot of challenge rating 7 is going to have. So you take a D100, which is 2 D10s. One of them has single digits and one of them has the decimal digits, and you roll. And you can see that that is a 64. So on a 64 roll, we're going to go over to this chart and find this line right here. It says 61 to 70, and follow that line over, and you'll see that we, on that slot that we killed, we would get 3d6 times 10 electrum pieces and 2d6 times 10 gold pieces. So you would just roll that number of dice. That's how much electrum and gold that the players collected from that creature. Pretty simple. You do the exact same thing with the horde charts. over here. The difference being that there's a lot more stuff, and so there's just a lot more things to roll and a lot more, like, stuff to read, but the principle is still exactly the same. So let's say that we had an encounter, and the challenge rating for that encounter ended up being a 14. We're going to go over to this chart here, the 11 through 16 chart, and we're going to roll the D100 again to see which part of the chart that we are looking at. I got a 64 again. That's interesting for those dice. All right, so 64 is going to be this line right here. This one, yeah. Nope, that one, sorry. This line right here. So you would follow this line across, and it'll tell you in this column if there are art objects. It'll tell you in this column about magic items. Sometimes it will tell you about gemstones. Sometimes it will tell you about how many different, like, I don't know. It'll tell you all sorts of different things. There's also an amount on here. Up here. There's an amount of coins that you would just have for all of the things in this chart. So there would be everything that you would roll would have this amount of money in it along with those items. Sometimes you can roll on these twice. Sometimes you can take stuff out. Like if it doesn't make sense for a horde of goblins to have a whole bunch of art items, you can just like give them the magic items and then like add a little bit of extra gold, or you can roll twice and just have that many magic items. You can just do whatever you want with that. Play with it. If you have a dragon, for example, even if it's a very small dragon and you're not rolling on like a crazy high chart, you can still roll like, oh, I roll 3 or 4 times to get how much treasure a dragon would have, and you would just have all of this stuff that you can add into the characters' treasuries once they've looted that area. You'll notice though that on magic items, it'll say roll 1d8 times on the magic item table C, or roll 1d6 times on magic item table E. That's because these charts are meant for concision, and they just tell you how many things you got, and then we get the flavor and the specifics later. Just like with the flavor of the art, on those charts at the very beginning, we get the flavor of the magic items, but the flavor of magic items is a little more important because it tells you what they do. Now those charts are in the next couple of pages. These pages are just describing different kinds of things that you can get and what they do. This is where you start getting some of the different flavor for the magic items. These are like minor properties, quirks, different sorts of things that are involved in magic items if you want to give them a little bit of a unique flavor, but it is just flavor for the most part. Here's where we get random magic items charts, and this starts on page 144. Now, the treasure hoard will say, roll 1d8 times on magic item chart D. And so you'll take a d8, you'll roll that, say we get like a 7 on that. Then you would go to magic table D, which is this one right here. Find the, let's see. Oh yeah, so we would roll 7 times. You would find magic item table D and then roll 7 times with those same percentile die that we talked about earlier. So we'll just do one for an example. See if I get a 64 again. That's a little bit cocked right there, but we'll just roll it there. Okay, so we've got 76 on that roll. We would come to magic table D. 76 is this line right here. Potion of Cloud Giant Strength. So that's a pretty cool thing. That just makes you especially strong for the duration of the potion. Cloud Giants are pretty big, so I think that's like a 20-something strength. And you would just do that 7 times to see just which of these things that you got from that particular treasure hoard. The different tables have different kinds of items in them, and that's why they're separated. Table B, for example, has like there's a potion of greater healing you can get. There's an alchemy jug. Those are pretty awesome. There is a cap of water breathing, rope of climbing. Like, these are all pretty... They're considered, I think, uncommon items, so they're really nice to have, but they're not, like, legendary by any means. But you can just get a bunch of really interesting things from that table. Whereas this table over here, Magic Table E, that's an 8th level spell scroll right there. 8th level spells are really big. So that's a pretty major find. Any 8th level spell, no matter what the spell actually is going to be a huge piece of treasure if you roll on that particular table. Same thing here. There's a 9th level spell scroll, Potion of Supreme Healing. That one's a really good one. That's 10d4 plus 20 for healing, I believe. I've never actually even seen one of those in a game before. I've seen all of the other smaller kinds of healing, but I've never seen that one being, like, used at all, because they're just really rare and very expensive. So that's how those magic tables work. And then if you want a description of, see, there's further tables right here that you can see. They all work exactly the same way. But if you want a description of any of those magic items, just go further in the chapter, and then you've got alphabetically just all of these different things that you can get. For example, if we rolled Belt of Dwarven Kind, and we would come to this little section right here, it would tell us what it does, it would tell us how you use it, it would tell us, like, what the effects of using it are, it would tell you if you need to attune to it, which is a thing that, it's a D&D mechanic that means that there's some things that you can only use if you've, like, really focused and sort of, like, mentally attuned to them. And that's the whole rest of the chapter is that stuff. It's about different items that you can have. There's a little section on making up your own items. There's a little section on each different kind of thing. Like, there's wands, there's boots, there's rods, there's belts, there's cloaks. Like, just do all sorts of different things. And that the whole rest of the chapter is just all of that sort of thing. This is a deck of many things, which is complicated and interesting. Google that one. There's, like, little statues that have magical properties. Like, these animal ones, for example, will summon an animal companion for, I think, once every 7 days, something like that. There's gauntlets, there's swords, there's like a folding boat. That's pretty cool. You know, all sorts of different things that have varying levels of importance. Yeah, rings. Some of the rings are like, they increase your AC by +1. Some of them are, they increase your strength by +1. You know, that sort of thing. That's all of that stuff is just listed in this chapter. And you don't have to read through every single one of those things. If you want to, like, find a cool magical item, there's a lot of online resources that can filter things for you. But they're all listed right there, tells you what they do, and all of the charts will, like, have a name for you to look up. It's all alphabetical. And that's that entire chapter for D&D Treasure.